for joining us again. This is Owen McCafferty and Dr. David Tack. Today we are talking about a very important topic of the fusion partnerships that we have been setting up in a series. And the topic of this discussion is only the honest need apply. In other words, we have an Internal Revenue Code that is, for most intents and purposes, very clear. And only honest people thrive. Nice guys finish first, and especially in a fusion partnership where there will be one income tax return signed and filed for the entire series of practices that are brought into it. You certainly want to have people of the same nature. So if you're honest, you want to be with another honest person. If you're an unfortunate, dishonest snake, you best be served with other dishonest snakes. Where it gets to be a real problem is if you have honest and dishonest people together. So our first message as part of what professional fusion partnerships are designed as is only for honest people that want to follow the Internal Revenue Code, that want to be honorable with each other, that want to do the right thing. So those that have an alternative viewpoint should look for some other adventure. So only the honest need apply. On that issue of honesty comes an issue of taking things to best advantage. Judge Learned Hand was quoted often, and paraphrasing what he said, it's our duty to take every opportunity to take advantage of every legitimate legal provision within the Internal Revenue Code. And by not taking advantage of every legal, legitimate opportunity of the Internal Revenue Code, you're basically following that theory through being unpatriotic. So the first part of what our message to you would be is if you're honest, you want to be with honest people. And professional fusion will be for honest people. Second issue that I think Dave and I would like to hit is that reference that we made in prior videos about the synergies of income, cost, and expense. Let's start out with the synergy of income and see how much time we have to go through some of the others, because the synergy of income in a professional fusion partnership is huge. When you're looking at elements of income in a profession, there's usually a pricing and a volume variance. I'd like to focus in professional fusion on the volume variance first, and then we'll go into pricing, Dave, okay?
Okay.
So in the volume variance in a profession, there's issues of transactional volume, and there's issues of competency in performing additional professional services. Some practices are very advanced in terms of the type of practice service that they can provide. A lot of continuing education is taken. Possibly some practitioners would be boarded. There are skill sets that have been developed in each practice that can become unique. We found in some of the entities that Dave and I were involved with that there was a wide variety of skill sets that could then be advantaged between the members of the group. So one practice would send almost through an internship program individuals in that practice to another practice that may have been gifted with a specific skill set. They were taught components not only of the professional activity, but also how to communicate that professional activity and that opportunity to the clients of their home practice. They had a mentor. They stayed at their practice for a long period of time and had clinicals, in essence, and they also had wet labs because they stood toe-to-toe, in some instances, with their fellow surgeons and learned the skills that were required. It was a huge opportunity for members of one group that we had to really improve the volume activity, not in terms of additional transactions per se, but offering a service that could be then of best benefit. Dave, do you remember telling any war stories?
So, specifically, we had one practice in our group that really specialized in laparoscopic surgery. So we sent everybody, all the veterinarians, from our practice to this practice to do laparoscopic surgery. And I believe that to this day, we probably do more laparoscopic surgery in our practice than anybody else in town. We sent people to a reproductive specialist, transcervical artificial insemination. And so we had a group that got along really well, would allow people from our practice to go in and work with their people, get our people trained, and really we didn't have to go to some special course to have it done. We had the people in our group that could go ahead and do this. It worked out really well, and Owen was talking about the business aspect, and there's a medical and surgical aspect. So we could send people to get trained, but earlier we talked about there being a meeting that we'd have, and we would do this twice a year. And a lot of veterinarians their skill sets are good in medicine and surgery, client communication, but sometimes lacking in business. And so what we would do is we would drill deep into each one another's practices. We'd look at our income centers, our expense centers, and it was amazing where some people were doing so well. Well, how was it they were doing so well? Well, we found out. I mean, they'd tell us and go, oh, this totally makes sense. But we could also, on the expense side, and this was, it hit home for a lot of people, is you could look at our expense reports, or people could look at it in our group and go, there's no way that, your heartworm and flea and tick medication or your dog food sales are netting you this amount. There's no way. You have to be stolen from. Well, I can't be. And I'm a good example. I had a dog, we sold some dog food, and we weren't making the money we should have been on that dog food, and I really didn't think about it, didn't look into it. And once I got called on it, I really had to look at it, because now I'm before my peers, and so what I did is I locked it up, and all of a sudden my dog food income was where it should be. And so these meetings were so good. And we had, to Owen's point, it's you have to have people that are willing to have give and take, and take criticism. Nobody's getting yelled at, but you go, why didn't I think of this? And something that you started to talk about, and I think is important in this Fusion group, people can come into an organization, and do these people, how much liability do these people have? How much money do they owe? Does that become Fusion's problem? Does Fusion then take on liabilities that people are bringing in, or do those people retain those liabilities personally? Does that make sense? What you just said?
Okay. The quick answer is no, because we're using a format under Section 721 of the Internal Revenue Code where only assets are transferred. Liabilities are retained by the contributing entity. But again, that's a little bit
Okay,
to
I'm sorry. I'm thinking
develop.
of these things
No,
as you're talking.
it's to develop. And as I said before, we don't rehearse. What we try to do is inform. So we will have a separate video on that, but you bring up a very, very good question. The pricing issue is the second part of the synergy of income. And something that we developed in our group was known as priceology. Now, priceology is not new, it's been around for decades. But it's basically assessing the fairness and the adequacy of a pricing structure by utilization of logic of what's being performed, sensitivity to the geographic area, and the value that is being provided. In a group, in a practice partnership such as Fusion, we have the advantage of multiple consultants, and these are our fellow members, where fee schedules are reviewed for fairness and adequacy and determination. Members of the group are all in separate markets, separate geographic areas, and the issue of pricing becomes a factor of determination of what is appropriate for a fee or service within the profession. So the priceology section or the pricing section, the volume section regarding adequate development of additional skills and services in surgery and medicine, all have a bearing in terms of what the advantage would be when a group of great doctors, very honest doctors amassed together, look at each other's operation skill sets, and as Dave said, without any sort of preconceived notion or animosity, but rather a desire to help each other and take advantage of our first synergy, the synergy of income. Now, in future seminars or future videos, I give way too many seminars, we'll be talking about the synergies of expense and cost. But in a group like Professional Fusion, as it relates to the specific disciplines of practicing professionals, there are opportunities that exist. With that in mind, I'd like to again thank my good buddy, Dr. Tack, and we will be seeing you on a future discussion.